Today I wanted to talk about a mastermind, and there's a couple different definitions to that. The one I'm talking about is getting a bunch of people together and you sort of form, I guess, one mind focused on a goal or whatever, what have you. Napoleon Hill talks about it in his book, Think and Grow Rich. I think he talks about it in a lot of different places and articles and such. One quote says, no mind is complete by itself. It needs contact and association with other minds to grow and expand. That's a quote from Napoleon Hill. And so I started thinking about it. I think it came up in a book that I'm reading right now, this book called, it's called Deep Work. And I think it came up in that. I can't remember. I am going to talk about that book. It's actually pretty cool. But for now, I wanted to get into this mastermind stuff because there's a lot of ways you can use a mastermind in your graffiti. If you have a crew, there's ways to use it there. If you have an art collective or if you want to form an art collective, you can create your own masterminds around just about anything, business, all these kind of things. I'm part of a couple of groups that some consider a mastermind, some don't. Anyway, so I have some bullet points here that I wanted to go through. The first one I wanted to talk about is how graffiti writers can utilize a mastermind, because it's pretty interesting to me when I started thinking about it. And one thing that I thought about when we were talking to Steve Grody early on when we started the podcast, Cub and I were talking to him, and he was talking about how, I think he was saying that, the internet, it sort of created a more general style because we have access to all kinds of different things. And he was talking about how there used to be regional styles and crew styles and all this kind of stuff. And so as I was thinking about this mastermind concept, I thought, when you're in a crew with other people, you sort of inadvertently do this kind of mastermind thing where you're kind of feeding off each other and getting ideas and things like that. And I believe that's how things like crew style and regional styles end up happening, where people start to learn off of each other. But what I started thinking about is, what if you were really deliberate and that you were going to form a mastermind with people from your crew and actually set an objective on what you wanted to accomplish within that mastermind and have like specific meetings and specific outcomes that you're going for? I thought there could be some room for some pretty interesting results. So if you were to get together with your crew, or maybe just specific people from your crew or people that you just hang out with, and just say, hey, let's create a mastermind and have a more advanced black book session where you're actually sharing ideas and trying to get towards some specific goal. So say you wanted to develop a new style. I mean, I know that's very difficult given how old the graffiti game is, but that would be kind of something cool to get together with a bunch of other writers and really kind of feed off each other's ideas. You could share elements, say like, let's say you wanted to just mastermind with your group and just find new ways that letters could connect together. Like if you wanted to get really granular, if you were like, let's just come up with like really cool ways on how letters connect. And that's kind of something that's cool in graffiti that you don't see in very many other places, where we connect letters together and things go over and under. Like imagine if you were to just have a brainstorming session with some like-minded people and just come up with all these interesting ways that you can connect your letters together. And then those would be tools that everybody within the group was free to use. I think that'd be something that kind of cool. You could have a group of people together and really create a game plan on how you're going to establish yourself in your city, and really focus in on these ideas and really hone in a strategy to do that, rather than the way that we normally do it, was everybody just kind of does their thing. Maybe you put some productions together and some plans and things like that. But I think it might be kind of cool if everybody got together and just really focused on these specific ideas and developed them together. I think you could get pretty far in coming up with different solutions that maybe we haven't seen before. So I read an article, I think it was in the Napoleon Hill Foundation. I took some notes, some stuff that was pretty cool. One thing they said, if you're just kind of starting out, you could start a mastermind with yourself, which is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of odd to think about, because the idea of a mastermind is that you get a bunch of people together. But when I was starting to think about it, I was like, you could really lay the groundwork for it and sort of get ahead before you really start to bring other people in. So you could create a routine for yourself to learn and improve every day, read, research, draw, do whatever that's going to move you forward, or start practicing the kind of things that you want to create within your mastermind before you even bring anybody else in. Something I've been doing lately, I think, I can't remember the name of the book. It was like How Successful People Think. I think that's the name of it. The one thing that he said in there that I've been actually utilizing lately is scheduling thinking sessions. So like if you block out a time when you say, okay, I'm going to block out this time in my day and I'm going to spend that time thinking about this one subject. So what I've been doing is maybe there's some aspect of my business that I want to focus on thinking about. So I'll schedule in that time, say it's like 30 minutes to an hour. I think I did an hour yesterday just thinking about different advertising stuff. And so the way I've been doing it is I just schedule that hour or 30 minutes or however long. I have a sketchbook that I use only for those thinking sessions. And I just sit there and I think about that subject and then write notes and try to come up with different ideas. And then those notes end up going over to my computer. In fact, I did a thinking session about this episode and I wrote all the notes down in my book. And then I ended up creating bullet points from that thinking session. And that's what we ended up with here. So I don't know, I guess you be the judge if that worked or not. So what else do I got here? So in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill had this really interesting thing that he did. And I had talked about it on some episodes where he created a mastermind within his mind of individuals that he wanted to learn from. So he had a bunch of different people in there, people that he didn't have access to. I think most of them or all of them had passed away. I can't remember all the people, but I believe he had like Abe Lincoln in there and he had like Thomas Edison in there. And he was really going deep on it. Like he researched these guys and learned as much about them as he could in order to try to like create a scenario in his mind where he could actually ask them questions. And since, I don't know if I can explain it right, it was just very interesting, but he would be able to ask them questions and they would be able to answer it different than what he would be able to answer, because it sounds like he was really good at visualizing this kind of scenario that was happening in his mind. So he had this like round table scenario and he was able to get all this feedback that was different than what he would come up with if he was pulling it from his own sort of thought processes. So when he would ask Thomas Edison how he would solve a certain problem, the answer would often be different than what he would have come up with had he not done that. Like he knows a lot about that person and things like that. And he even said that like people started developing their own personalities. Like I think he said, what was it? Maybe Abe Lincoln would show up late every time and then he would just stay quiet in the corner. It was really interesting that how deep he got into this. And it sounds kind of crazy, but at the same time, if you do any meditation or any kind of visualization or anything like that, I think you can really start to see the power in something like this. So the idea is that you could start this mastermind before you even bring anybody in. And I think that'll give you a good head start on it. So when you do bring someone in, you already have a structure and you already have sort of like a way of doing things. So along those lines, you can even create a schedule. You know, you're going to have, and you could do it since you're doing it by yourself. You could schedule these thinking sessions, you know, say every Tuesday you do an hour from 6 to 7 p.m. or whatever that is. And then you already have a set schedule and you already have like a set method that you go with. And so then when you go to bring in other people, it's going to be more serious. You know, you already have some things worked out. I think there could be a lot of benefit in that. And in fact, that's kind of the way I'm going with a mastermind that I'm going to be forming myself. So I think it's important to find the discipline, and this is something I struggle with. It's important to find the discipline to keep those appointments with yourself. And that's something I've been asking myself a lot. Like if I have a meeting with somebody, I'm going to show up to that meeting. If something happens and I can't make it, I don't just do the no-show thing. Like I do my best to, you know, things happen and I have forgot about appointments. I'm not saying I'm perfect in that regard, but when I do have an appointment with somebody, I do take that very seriously. And the goal is to be there on time and ready to go. So I think if you're forming that mastermind with yourself to get started, you should hold yourself accountable and make sure you show up for yourself in those meetings in the same way you would if somebody else was involved. And then another thing that they said in the article that I read, I don't remember who wrote the article, but it was I believe it was on the Napoleon Hill website. I can try to find it and maybe link it in the show notes. But they were saying that while you're kind of doing this, you should consider everybody that you meet a potential mastermind partner. And I thought that was pretty interesting because that's not really the approach that I would normally do had I not heard that. And I thought that is pretty cool because you might end up bringing in somebody that you wouldn't have thought of as a mastermind partner. And it turns out they bring a lot to the table. And I think that's a cool way to look at it. So another thing that I was thinking is, this time that we're in right now with social media, all this technology, and that everybody's really used to using Zoom for meetings or different online platforms. We're in the best place we've ever been in terms of being able to get people together. So you could really create a mastermind with people from all over the world. I mean, obviously time zones are going to be challenging, but at the same time, we have all this technology at our disposal. And I think now is just such a good time to do something like this. You can meet up with different artists or graffiti writers from all over the world. You could create a mastermind group. You could do it over Zoom or over a voice platform or something like that. You could share things over social media, email. You could have a Slack. You could use Slack. I mean, we use that in our business. It's a free communication tool. You could have a Discord server. There's just tons of different ways that you can get everybody together in your group and start throwing ideas around and start scheduling things and kind of putting some pretty interesting stuff together. So those are my general thoughts on the mastermind. And then I wrote down some specific ideas to share and some that I'm going to actually use in my group. And maybe there's some stuff here that you could use. So one of the ideas I had is if you were to wanted to create a mastermind for personal development, one obvious one that I know a lot of people do is you choose a book to read. You read a chapter and everybody discusses it. It's kind of like a book club. We've all heard of this kind of thing. But what a lot of people don't realize is that the benefit from this is when you read a book, only so much is going to stick. I mean, at least most of us. Some people can just retain information all crazy. But imagine if you were to read a chapter and then actually meet up with a group and discuss that chapter for an hour, how much more you would get out of that book had you done that. And then that group could also, the thing is when I read these kind of books, I read a lot of business books and personal development books and stuff like that. And I learn all this cool stuff, but then I find maybe I don't implement everything. I think if you were to do a mastermind and you were to bring people in and say, hey, let's go through this book chapter by chapter together. Once a week, we'll read a chapter and then we'll discuss it. And then part of that discussion, maybe you can find a way for everybody to implement the lessons that you learned in there. And then that group, you can hold each other accountable, the next meeting. So, hey, everybody tell us how implementing that chapter information worked for you. And you start sharing these ideas. There's accountability there. So then you're going to want to make sure that you do the work so you can bring cool shit to the table at your next meeting. I think that could be very good. Another one that a lot of people use is diet and exercise accountability groups. This is very, very common in the personal development space. Accountability is very powerful for most people. I tend to not use accountability. Not that I think it's good or bad. I don't know. I might not be one of those people that, honestly, I've never actually tried it. So I don't know. I just don't. I just tend to not really do that. But I know there's a lot of people that really find a lot of value in that. And so if you were going to do a diet and exercise accountability group, I'm a big fan of 75 Hard. There's a lot of accountability groups around that program where, if you're meeting every week, you're going to want to stick to the program, and you could even incorporate different metrics that you could track, things like that. Those are very powerful for a lot of people. So then I wanted to finish up with some bullet points of mastermind ideas that are specific to graffiti and art that I thought would be pretty cool. And these are ones that I'm going to utilize in my group. I haven't talked to them about it yet, but I'm going to bring this up right after I finish recording this shit, actually. So one thing I was thinking, what would be super cool is, let's say you had a mastermind group that's just generally based around graffiti. And, you can come up with all kinds of different things that you can do on a weekly basis, and it can change every week. But one thing I thought would be kind of interesting is if you were to have like a roundtable discussion about color schemes. People can share their knowledge on color palettes and color theory and bring all these kind of different color ideas to the table. And then together you come up with a color scheme, and then everybody goes and paints it after the mastermind. And then the next week you bring all the results to the table and everybody discusses it. I think there could be a lot that people could learn, especially if people are open-minded to being critiqued and things like that. I think that could be pretty awesome to do. And I definitely want to try that. As I said earlier, you could develop styles together. I mean, I think that could be super cool. I mean, I would imagine that most or just about all of us graph writers have sat down and decided you were going to come up with a new B or new letter or whatever. And then you go to draw, and it's still your shit. Like, it's hard to get out of that mode. So it might be kind of cool to actually develop styles together. Like, it doesn't always have to be just you coming up with shit. I mean, we all get influenced by people. I mean, some of my very first letters were letters that were given to me by Eclipse. And that was a good way for me to learn, so it was technically not my style, but I did learn a lot by doing those letters. And then I ended up coming up with my own style from that. That's a very powerful thing. It's a very powerful way to learn things, sharing ideas with each other. You guys could all draw together and share all these different ideas. And then you guys could take bits and pieces from each other's stuff and incorporate it into yours. There's sort of some, what's the word? Taboo, I guess, about using other people's shit. But obviously, if you're using it, if you're going into this with the intention that you're going to do that, then it's okay to do, obviously. And the last one, a lot of people have done this. We've seen it before. It's a name swap. So everybody draws each other's name. And so I'll draw a sketch for you. You draw a sketch for me. I'll paint your sketch. You paint my sketch, etc. So we've all seen that, and a lot of crews do that. But I thought it might be cool if you did that, but then also had like a really good roundtable discussion, everybody talking about how everybody did, what you learned. I think these kind of things can be really beneficial, and maybe you could see quite a bit of growth in a lot of areas. And those are just some examples that I thought of, but there's countless different things you could do with a mastermind. When you bring all those people together, it creates a more powerful mind than what you would have on your own. So I don't know, give it a try. I've mentioned it in the past, creating a group, or we've created a group. We have a Discord channel. We meet on the Breakout app, talk about personal development stuff and all this positive shit. And we talk about graph. If that's of any interest to you, just hit me up on Bus166 on Instagram, and I'll send you a link. All right, appreciate you listening. And if you like what we're doing, please share it. Tell somebody about it. All right, later. All right.
Appreciate each and every one of you guys who are supporting the cause and continue to spread the love. And stay up.